Sicotte, executive editor of Brewer and Cider Business. Welcome to another Cider Business podcast here on YouTube and Spotify. And of course, we're available 24 hours a day at brewermag.com and ciderbusiness.com. Make sure that you're liking and subscribing and following along everywhere there. We are sponsored by Keg Logistics, and you can go to keglogistics.com/brewermag for more details. Well, when a consumer walks down a retail aisle, you've got just a few seconds to grab their attention, right? So how do you know when it's time to evolve your brand's look? And how do you do it without losing the customers who helped build you up? Well, today on the Cider Business Podcast, I'm joined by Jeremy Quaglia, who is founder of High Limb Cider in Plymouth, Massachusetts. And he's going to discuss the company's Bite into Bold brand refresh. Well, the cider inside the can didn't change. Nearly everything the consumer sees has. And Jeremy shares the business thinking behind the redesign, why shelf presence has become more important than ever, and also how the company approached simplifying its portfolio and what role distributors, retailers, and consumer expectations all played throughout the process. Here's Jeremy Quaglia of High Limb Cider on the Cider Business Podcast. This Brewer Mag podcast is sponsored by Keg Logistics. Now's the perfect time to review your keg management strategy. Whether you're seeking a truly flexible keg rental program or intrigued by the seamless distribution freedom of paper fill, Keg Logistics is ready to craft a personalized solution for you, ensuring you receive the kegs you need precisely when you need them. For details, visit keglogistics.com/brewermag. Keg Logistics, modern solutions for keg efficiency. And here on the Cider Business Podcast, we welcome in founder of High Limb Cider, Jeremy Quaglia. Thanks for joining us on the podcast today, Jeremy.
Thank you so much for having me, John. I appreciate it.
Yeah, well, I want to say congratulations. I always do this backwards. There we go. With the new look, the new cans, you guys sent along, some of the varietals and had a chance to kind of go through them all, except this is the one I might have to crack it open by the end. We'll see how that
I like
goes.
I like it.
But, a new look, a rebrand, but not a product refresh, I think sometimes, and that's going to be kind of important part because consumer perception obviously is a part of this. But you guys already had won awards at Glen Cap and US Cider Open, and you've been growing on your distribution. What convinced you that not rebranding was the bigger risk?
What we saw a lot, it's a great question actually, because it's like, in today's market, if it's not broke, don't fix it is a pretty good way of continuing a business. I think it was just time to show kind of what the brand was more about in the physical sense. Some of the best advice that we've received is, it's very short and sweet, but you're in the fashion industry. Really, when you look at a product, you have a very short amount of time on the shelf to catch someone's attention. And if your project, the product needs to be as engaging visually as it is tasting. And I know that's a kind of a no-duh statement, but a lot of times if things are growing, your brain just goes like, could it be better? And we got to a point where we're like, yeah, I think the brand needs to look like how it feels and tastes. And like, we're younger guys. We like to have fun. We like to be bold. We like to go crazy running a business and do all these wild things entrepreneurs do. And it's like the product should kind of look like that and give people that vibe.
Yeah. Let's go back to the original design then. It's one of those like, just open the doors and start selling, right? Like, right. I mean, you get something on, you do that. So did you look at it and go, yeah, this was the first draft, and now it's time for a redraft?
We did. At the time, what we were doing is probably about 2020, and everyone was having a wonderful year, and everything was going great in everyone's lives. So I don't know, maybe it was the fog of life, but we looked at it and we were like, we really like that it's sleek and clean and crisp and modern. And at the time on the shelves, everything was like really, really, really busy. It was huge, explosive graphics and crazy names and things like that. And kind of the quiet part seemed to stand out for us. And it worked. It did work, especially in our home market. And then as we were branching out into new states and new distribution and whatnot, we started noticing it was just something that people need to get it at a 10-foot view immediately. And in our home market, we had the advantage of people knowing the brand, and they're like, oh, High Limb looks different now. That's kind of a sexy thing. So they already understood it. I think the transition for us came from just trying to be a little bit easier to understand to consumers that weren't necessarily aware of the brand or as familiar. And so originally the original design just kind of was what we thought looked cool and differentiated us on shelves. And unfortunately, or fortunately, I think brands have to reevaluate that every 3-4 years sooner if it's not working. It's just people are kind of afraid of it because they get used to it and that's their baby and that's what they're used to seeing. But our tagline is bite into bold. We wanted to be bold with our decisions, and it's like, yeah, why not get a little facelift going and see if people gravitate towards it, change the format. We went from all 16 ounces to primarily 12 ounces, and it's been working. It's been cool.
Was there something either data driven, your wholesalers are talking to you, like where did the idea begin of, okay, yeah, it's time to start thinking about this and going forward with it?
Both, actually, both. And you hit the nail on the head, is those two things. Being out in the market constantly, talking to retailers, they're your best source of information. And I know people listening that do what I do. These are all things they already know. But just to answer the question, these guys eat, sleep, and breathe retail all day, every day, right? They know what works. They know what doesn't. They know why. They know why not. We started talking to them, and what we would notice is, like, even in a very small section of the cider market, a lot of people were starting to do clean and modern and crisp, and it's like that actually didn't stand out in the market anymore either. And we also kind of noticed a bit of fatigue in the 16 ounce format. Retailers would often be like, a lot of the 12 ounce cans sell better because it's less of a commitment. And even if they are bought into the brand, they like that they can try different ones or put it down. And it's funny because you start in the alcohol industry because you like to drink and you like making things for people that like to drink. Right. And you don't think that 4 ounces makes a huge difference, but it does, it actually does. And I think it just is more of an approachable style, and it feels more versatile to us.
Gotcha. And we'll get into talking about the actual agency and how you guys kind of went with them. But before you even went to an agency, what questions were you needing to be answered internally before you take that step and say, okay, like what were the big questions and like, what do we need to do and how are we going to do it? Like what else were you kind of thinking of?
What we were trying to do is solve that problem I mentioned as far as communication, right? Mm-hmm. Because if I can't be everywhere all the time, if our salespeople can't be everywhere all the time, you need a little bit of branding that feels communicative and connective. That was the biggest problem we were trying to solve, is from our sleek and modern branding that worked really well for us previously. We were just trying to upgrade a consumer's ability to understand the product really, really quick. What I've learned in my time in this industry is, like, if a consumer can understand the product, they typically, buying it is great. That's the overall goal. But the allegiance to the brand and that loyalty is really, really difficult. And if they can understand it, they tend to gravitate towards it a lot more. And it's a big reason why, like, tastings and events and all that sort of stuff is really imperative to growing a brand. Because if I'm standing there behind a table at a tasting that people kind of like turn their nose up at, and someone goes, "Oh, what's this?" And I can be like, "I started this in my parents' basement." They're like, "Huh." And they can gravitate towards that story and understand it. And you know what I mean? So we just tried to make that pivot in a product that people can, like, feel gravitated towards and understand, knowing it's a cider. It looks young, fresh, authentic, but also quality. So that was the biggest thing. And it, like, I know I'm over explaining it and waxing poetic about it, but that's really hard to like turn into a product. You know what I mean? These are all ideas. So that was the biggest problem to solve for sure.
Let's stick with the consumer and talk a little bit about just the what consumers think and what you think consumers think might not always line up. I mean, did you look at this rebrand as a way to get rid of something in a consumer's mind? When it came to looking, like you said, I mean, you're looking at a wall and you see things like your old can versus your new can. What did you want to get rid of a perception with the rebrand?
I think what we wanted to get rid of is this idea of almost, and this is just my opinion, of like unapproachability, where it was sleek, it was modern. But I think with the growing cider market, when we designed that, it was geared towards cider heads, people that went into the store for cider and they wanted to buy cider. What we tried to pivot towards are people walking by and being like, oh, what's that? And they might be like cider curious or interested, they're like, yeah, I'm starting to drink more ciders. Like, let me try these, to grab them, to not feel like exclusionary, to being like kind of too highbrow or too modern or too sleek, where it's like, maybe that's like a really boutique style that I might not want to invest $14 in or something, where this looks a lot more approachable, where non-cider drinkers, beer drinkers, any wine drinkers pick it up and they go, I think I might like this.
Yeah. And then of course you've already had, fans of the brand. How do you make sure that like in this discussion, like, let's not lose them? So you guys like did, the word mark it is up here, the logo, like this, I was assuming would be the most important part, right?
Right.
There.
Right.
There.
Exactly. The bullseye effect. And it's funny because I always have cans on me. It was just when you eat, sleep, and breathe something, you tend to be a little bit too introspective about it. And there's a lot of hallmarks of branding that you can overlook when you're in your own head about it. Whereas like this, initially I was like, does the logo need to be that big? It feels like almost like, yeah, we get it. As I'm wearing a giant logo on my hat and the shirt, but it actually is really effective, because if people knew the brand before, this is a big signal. It's a big billboard effect of like, this is the product that you know and love. It's here. It's bigger. It's louder. It's bolder. And it's easily discoverable on shelves. So if you looked at our past branding, it was a little bit more subdued, which is great, because it was like, if you know, if you love the product, you go right to it. But we're trying to attract new audiences and new cider drinkers. And so we just leaned into the, what we thought as at the time is kind of a really big logo, but it works and it ties really well together. And on the 4-pack cartons, it's just as loud, it's just as big. And if you have some cool IP, you have branding, essentials, you have your identity and your logo and whatnot, like, you should lean into it. And so we went with it and people really seem to like it. We haven't really had a lot of pushback from any of our traditional consumers.
Yeah. Were you worried though that maybe someone saw that and thought it was new and changed and it was going to taste different? Like, how much is it hard to get through that part of it and just be like, just open the can, it's the same thing?
Oh, big time. I am in my head so often about these things. Is like, it's almost like paralysis by analysis, which is like something we all try and avoid. And at the end of the day, if the product is really good and it's the same thing that people know and love and better, we always try and get better. So we're never going backwards. We're always going forwards. And yeah, you have that anxiety of like, are people going to think this is different? Because some brands do that. They do grow, they do scale, they rebrand, and the product is totally different. So yeah, but I think at the end of the day, it's exactly what you said. Most people are like, oh, I know that brand, and they buy it and they open it and they're like, yep, like it, still good. You know, you can overthink everything, but at the end of the day, if the design is good and the product is good, people will gravitate towards it.
Now, the press release mentioned something about a streamlined lineup. Did you learn a lot from SKU management and making sure, okay, this is what we need to go forward with? How did that process work for you guys with, this, I see the different six here and some of the 16s, a lot of 12 4-packs. Like, how did you learn what was going to be going forward?
That was a tough one because, you get attached to these things. They're kind of like your kids after a while. You're like, I'm so proud of this. I'm so happy that how this came out. But the market dictates what is good and bad. You can think it's great, but you can't buy all your product. And if you do, you're probably not making a lot of it. So, we have metric breakdowns of what SKUs sell, what SKUs don't. But what we tried to really do is kind of silo a little bit of, how we do our styles that are most popular and really have everything kind of revolve around that approach. Because if it works for this, the little variance in a seasonality of a release or whatnot, like that's, if it's done in the style that's really doing well, then it should do well itself. And that required us we got rid of a lot of stuff that we really like. And, we still have it in the tap room. We have a lot of, fun stuff in the tap room, stuff that didn't necessarily sell in the market flies out of the tap room. So that's a tough one to understand. But the SKU consolidation and management has been really, really good for us because it really helped us streamline production as well. Production has gotten a lot easier to manage. It's also an ego thing too. Like a lot of times you can make stuff because you can. You're like, ooh, I have this idea, and if I make it in a tank and put it in a can, that means it's good. And it's like, it might be. It could be, but the market dictates if that's good. And you got to really give consumers what they want. And that's what sells the best.
Sure. So kind of going through, and I checked your website while you're talking. So it's kind of and I got to look at it again just so I'm not getting it. But Core, Goldie, and OG are your core brands.
Yep.
And then some seasonals with Rock Juice, Pumpkin Spice Lover, Cape Days, Mixed Up, and Maple Old Fashioned, and then some lighter beer or lighter ciders, Classic Apple, Passion Fruit, Strawberry Lemonade, Black Cherry, and we could keep going on the freshly baked series. So
you're proving our point of SKU consolidation.
Sure. So looking at that, like, was there anything that had to go away that maybe still is in the tap room, but you loved it? Everyone loved it internally, but it just didn't sell, or it didn't tell the same story that you guys wanted?
Yeah, there was a phase maybe like a year and a half ago. We were doing a lot of sour ciders, fruited sour ciders, and we loved them, and people in the tap room loved them. I'm a big Allman Brothers fan, so we did a peach sour called Eat a Peach. The label looked like the vinyl record. It was so cool. Again, that was me looking at extra ingredients we had, and I'm like, well, I think I could come up with something cool. Doesn't always necessarily flow into the market. Kills it in the tap room. A lot of the sours we do kill it in the tap room. We did peach rings. We did peach sour, like a lot of cool fruited sours. So those kind of have stayed in-house a lot. But conversely, Rock Juice, which is a seasonal we just released for the summer, we just made that on a whim for the tap room specifically. It's funny, it's the complete opposite. And that one's made with white wine, Chardonnay juice, and fermented on oyster shells, local oyster shells. And that one just took off. So we put it in the market this year, and it's doing really well. But again, in my head, I'm like, people probably don't want things fermented with oyster shells, but they did. So, you got to kind of swap your priorities about releases.
Yeah. And again, that was, I loved, cracking into some of these, like Cape Days. I thought it was hot that day, and I was outside, so that was perfect.
Oh, it's perfect for
Rock Juice, and again, when you end up getting, kind of a variety sent to me. You kind of have to go, it's just like a putting a flight together. You're like, okay, where am I going to start and how am I going to, what am I going to end? So I
Right.
saved like the more pineapple upside down, for the end, like kind of went dry to sweet.
Smart.
And it was so great. Rock juice, I thought was, surprising. Cause again, you're expecting something with the name and with the description, and it delivers, but it doesn't slap you in the face with it
Right,
either.
right, right.
So that was great. I really enjoyed that.
Oh, thank you.
So okay, let's get back to the branding part. When did this whole discussion begin for you guys? Like when we were like, all right, I think this is time. And you have to have something in the bank even to help get
Right,
this thing going as well. So kind of what
right.
was the timeline of the rebranding? This Brewer Mag podcast is sponsored by Keg Logistics. Now's the perfect time to review your keg management strategy. Whether you're seeking a truly flexible keg rental program or intrigued by the seamless distribution freedom of paper fill, Keg Logistics is ready to craft a personalized solution for you, ensuring you receive the kegs you need precisely when you need them. For details, visit keglogistics.com/brewermag. Keg Logistics, modern solutions for keg efficiency.
It was about, I want to say, a year and a half ago, we started kicking the tires on it, trying to figure out if it's the right move, why it's the right move. Not like, hey, we want to rebrand, let's just do it and see how it goes. Is we really thought a lot about this. And I think people outside the industry might not realize like how much time really goes into brands thinking about their new identity, because your identity is everything. It's everything, it can make or break a brand. And then we started toying around with ideas and elements and things like that. And the one thing we didn't want to do is just throw something together just to hit the ground running and get out to market. Because I think a lot of times you can overlook things. And even today, I'm looking at the cans right now. There's things I would change, and I think the team would change, but at the point in time, it felt really good. It felt really organic, and we hit the market with it. But that was kind of the timeline. And a year and a half feels like a really long time. But I think for the first time in the company's history, we had the ability to kind of sit down and go through like line item by line item by line item. Where typically in this industry, it's very hand to mouth. It's run and gun. You got to, every day is a new adventure and problem to solve. And you oftentimes like don't have a lot of time to sit down and be super dissective of it.
Yeah. Now, at what point did you realize this wasn't an internal project for you guys and you probably shouldn't be alone on this and it's time to work with an outside company?
Almost immediately.
Okay.
Like, probably as soon as I started sketching ideas and would pass it around, and they're like, "What were you drinking that night, Jeremy? Like, what is this?" I'm like, "No, dude, it's cool, promise." And we all kind of had those ideas where it's like, "Yeah, but what about this? And what about this?" And then eventually you're like, "I think this is a professional's job. This is and the brand we work with is Canopy, and they've been really, really, really good. They have some very high-end clients. They are very high achieving, but they've been unbelievably collaborative, where I know some of my ideas are stupid and crazy, that they'll take a little bit of the grain of inspiration and be able to put it through the filter of being a highly successful professional company. So to answer your question, almost immediately, but that's kind of where the heavy lifting starts, because unless you're a savant of putting this stuff together, it's a long road of finding someone that's a good fit, being able to collaborate together, have the ideas work together. So yeah, it took a long time, but we're very happy.
And it's a humility thing. You have to be able to understand I'm not the best at this. This is with anything in any part of the business. So it's like, yes, I could be a cider maker, like you said, at your parents' house. But let's say there's someone that might be better at making this for me. I might have the idea and I might be able to make it, but I need someone. Same thing with this. Like you said, we need a professional in the room. Yes, you can have your own sketches, but when someone can finally take a look outside without being in the building all the time, fresh set of eyes, and say, yes. And like you said, okay, I like what you did here. let's expound on that. I just got done watching Mad Men, so like all the Don Draperisms are going through right now no, about working with an agency like that where they have those outside ideas. I mean, that had to have been refreshing.
That's perfectly said, man. Like perfectly said, because when I started doing this was an era where, I mean, you remember this well. These like madmen would start breweries in the woods with no experience, and they're just like savants of learning all this stuff. And there was like this sexy romanticism of being like this hermit that made this multi-million-dollar brewing company. And so you always want to do things yourself. And I love that. I absolutely love doing things myself, learning, discovering, testing. But as time goes by and as, delegation becomes way more of an important element of a business, it's so nice to be able to pick up a phone or have a meeting with someone whose expertise is way above yours and get schooled again and have them just be like, well, I understand you feel that way. Here's how I look at it. And those are really important things. I think a lot of times people are kind of too headstrong and they're like, well, this is my brand and my business and this is how we do it. And it's like you said, fresh eyes, new ideas, new perspectives are really what make those big jumps happen. And we just signed up for the ride of, all input, all new ideas, all like fresh perspectives on things. That's what drives growth in a business. And I loved it. It was actually really, really fun.
Was there anything that really surprised you, something that you learned through the branding process that now you can hold on to and it might translate into other parts of the business?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's one of the things I really fell in love with was kind of the psychology of the branding. It's so, again, I don't have that background, but I find it fascinating is every little decision really has a unique goal behind it where it's like we did this because consumers would react like this, and it's the cause effect where typically you look at something and you just go, I don't know, it looks cool, why not? These guys are so detail oriented in their approach of why they do and how they do and what purpose it causes that was fascinating to me. And for sure, yeah, we definitely carry a lot of that insight. Going back to the comment of the fashion industry, that didn't come from Canopy. That came from another gentleman that we were working with. But it's really good advice. It's kind of like yeah, of course, like, yeah, we are. But when you start looking through things of other people's lenses, that's, I think, when growth happens in your business.
Sure. Now, it wasn't just the packaging that you guys had to redo. You had to redo the website as well. How much does a website matter nowadays? And how much does it play in doing more than just letting people know where you are or what time you guys are open? I mean, like, how does the website be a sales tool as well?
That's such a good question because it's something I wrestle with personally. I speaking completely personally here, like I typically don't go to companies' websites. I'll go to their Instagram or I'll go to social media, and like they'll typically tell you everything that you're hoping to know or discover about a brand or a restaurant or a bar or whatever. I am shocked of the amount of website inquiries. Hey, I went on your website booking tap room reservations and stuff. Like it was a blind spot for me for sure, because I thought that the website kind of went the way of the dinosaur and you don't really need one, Yeah. But it really does still play a huge role. And even if it just is for like a 15-second scroll, it seems that there's still a lot of people out there that refer to that as like your brand Bible. So it kind of has to be pretty informative, but also engaging. You don't want to give them a 2003, pixelated website that just tells them what they need to know. It needs to be fun, because if you want your brand to be fun, kind of all of the elements have to be too.
Was there anything that was added in the rebranding that, that you didn't have in there before that you're like, yeah, okay, it makes sense that we should have that?
The online store is something that's really, really imperative. There's so many platforms now that they can ship directly to your door. So if you're in your home state where we're not distributed right now, we can get it shipped to you. I know a lot of brands have done that for a long time. We had not shied away from it, but we just had our hands full with just production, distribution, sales, and it was growing, growing, growing. And some other brands had been like, yeah, it's a lot of work. But I think at this point in the discovery phase of the new branding that we have, it's going to be really, really cool for us, even if it's a 4-pack to Washington. It's someone discovering the brand out there. And to be honest with you, it's humbling, because from doing this in my parents' house and being like, why did you go to college and now you're fermenting apple juice in our house? And then someone across the country wants to buy it. Like it's pretty cool. It's very humbling.
Yeah, let's talk about e-commerce. Like it has changed, especially since 2020. How has the website been going so far, obviously, and how long has it been since you flipped the switch to it?
Few weeks.
Okay.
So we're still tweaking. We're still, putting the finishing touches on it and whatnot. And we really don't know what we don't know, unfortunately. But which is the most fun part of a business, is you finding out on the fly that you need to do this and that and everything in between. But I think the e-commerce thing, an aspect of the website, will be really, really cool. Like I said, it's just a different touch point for people that couldn't necessarily access the product. But also merch. We send a ton of merch around the country all the time. People visit Plymouth, Mass, where we're located. Super touristy spot. A lot of people come in the fall. A lot of people come and they have cool experiences, and then they want to, either bring some home, or when they get home, they want to buy it and remember the experience. So it's been cool. It's the e-commerce thing is really a point of connectivity with people where you can't necessarily touch them or their market organically.
Sure. Well, obviously it's all still kind of new. And like you said, you don't know what you don't know, but is there anything that you would have either done different or started earlier in this process?
As far as the rebrand website, or all of the above?
The rebranding, yeah.
I guess it's a no-brainer to say I would have started rebranding earlier. But the time it took, I don't know how much earlier, that you're pretty much bleeding into the original design then.
Yeah.
More likely, my answer would be spending a lot more time with retailers. Again, super valuable asset. They're awesome. They love the brand. If they're supporting you, they're my best friend. You know what I mean? It's like they don't have to. Just probably a little bit more time picking their brain and understanding their perspective, because a lot of times they're telling you stuff and you're either choosing to listen or willingly being like, yeah, but what I do is really good because I do it. Which is something you just have to get over. And they always don't want to tell you what they would change because they know it's your baby, but probably just spending more time having that direct conversation rather than trying to be like, but this is what we do and let's do more of it. Because I think if it's done better, it organically grows.
Sure. And just, let's kind of, I guess, giving some advice to others that are in the same situation that you are. Is there any mistakes that you see, and maybe not specific mistakes, but just overall things that people aren't doing right now when it comes to thinking about rebranding? And is there any signs that they should look for that it's time for that refresh?
In my opinion, what I said as far as talking to retailers, listen, they're in the business of moving units and you're in the business of moving units. And I'm not trying to make it very like reductionist of being like, it doesn't matter what we do as long as we're selling a lot of it. That's not what I'm saying. They always want you to do better because they want to do better, and you should take that free advice. And we really started taking it. And the other thing would probably be kind of what I touched on in the beginning of like, don't design to your taste. My taste is very different than what we previously did, but we thought it would be more effective. and vice versa. And I think what's really important is to be like, just because you think it looks good doesn't mean the market might reciprocate that passion towards it. And do some research, ask around, knock on doors. We would legitimately like print out printer paper wraps on the cans, and I would go to retailers and be like, you like this one or this one, and why? And they're like, this is how you guys are doing it. And I'm like, well, yeah, we want to know. Like, you're the one that will be selling it. Tell us. And honestly, the feedback was like almost always different than what we thought would work. So don't go, listen, I believe in trust your gut 100%, but it's also probably telling you that like the people who are in charge of selling your product all day, every day, know stuff that you might not know.
So cutting and pasting, like first grade craft activities, is the exact way to run your cider. See,
yes,
our teachers always were getting us prepared for the future.
Mm-hmm.
So that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Let's wrap it up with this one. If a cidery listening or watching has limited resources, can't do an entire rebrand right now, what should they be investing in? Should it be re-looking at packaging, re-looking at your website, figuring out your message, or even just updating product photography, on socials? And where would you start? Do you think, or is there something else that start here?
No, I think those are all really good elements. I think as far as product photography and brand identity, you hit the nail on the head. A lot of people look at social and forward-facing brand elements as kind of like an after the fact thing where it's like, oh, you got to go into stores and sell and sell and sell. Again, going back to the consumer understanding your product and your brand, you likely have a connection as a business owner or sales representative with a brand that the consumer doesn't. And like, let that through in the branding, let that through in the product. And I think a lot of times people will gravitate a lot more like strongly than you probably would have anticipated previously. So like, if you can make your social, your photography, everything you mentioned feel like how you feel about the product, people will understand it and gravitate towards it.
Well, awesome. Well, I always appreciate talking business with you, but I like to wrap things up with fun as well. So
I like it.
I got some goofy ones. You don't know what's coming, but we'll see where this goes. Huh?
I love
you ready?
it. I'm ready.
If your coworkers turned one of your habits into a drinking game, what would people be taking a drink for if they have some kind of dartboard or checklist? What Jeremy does this so often. Okay, he did it. Drink.
Probably say dude or swear. I'm polished when I need to be, but I was born in Providence, went to school in Boston, live on the South Coast. It's like, it's kind of ingrained in me. Dude, I say dude constantly. Swear. So I don't know. They might have alcohol poisoning if they're playing that game, or just working constantly. I think people, if every time I'm there when I'm supposed to be home or doing something else with my life, that's another alcohol poisoning thing. I think they'd have to be careful of that.
It was fine. I think you've probably seen this reel and people have remade it many times, but it's like the public perception of the owner walking in and he's got his glasses on and just like doing one thing. And then like they show him in like, finger gunning people. Then it's like how it really is. And you're like struggling to open the door because you have 9 things in your hand and you're, 3 people are asking you questions at the same time. Like I think it's always funny, especially as like a consumer watching something like, oh, it's not all, sunshines and lollipops. It's work.
Oh, constantly. Toilets get clogged, man. Like, you got to take care of that. You got to clean, scrub floors. It's funny that you say that because, like, one of my things that I really overlooked was just everything breaks all the time. And everyone watching this that owns a place like High Limb will know everything breaks all the time. And it's always at the most inconvenient times. Families visiting, there's a crisis in your personal life. A machine's going to break, and then that's just how it goes. And that that translates to the facility too. Like I said, toilets get clogged, roofs leak, things happen, and you just have to kind of figure it out. And it's also good to be visible too, right? Because people think you're like Same thing, like sunglasses, finger guns, like there for 2 hours a day type thing, you know?
All right. Which cidery do you wish you had opened, or just a cider brand that you wish that you had created?
I really love Down East. I think Down East is a really, really cool brand. They're unapologetic. I've always loved their approach. They're up in Boston. They do really, really well in the state. They do really, really well across the nation. They just kind of do what they do, and it is what it is. And I think that's a really difficult thing in today's market to execute on. Like we were talking about earlier, like people are so worried and prescriptive of how am I going to be seen? How am I going to be doing this? But then if like you go to their Instagram and you read their captions and stuff, it's just kind of like tongue in cheek. They're having fun. I think they do a good job. I'm a big fan of them. Respect them a lot.
Sticking with the cider industry a little bit, you are surviving the zombie apocalypse. What three people from the cider industry are you picking as your zombie apocalypse surviving team?
Oh boy. Oh boy. Cider industry specifically?
I mean, if you want to lean into beer or wine or wherever,
Okay.
I mean, well, if you have some ideas.
I do. One of my closest friends, his name is Ryan Gavush. He started out as a brewer. Now he owns South County Distillers in Westerly, Rhode Island with Gray Sale.
Oh, okay.
That kid's someone you want. He's a survivor. They'll make a movie about him someday. He's like, he knows how to farm, raise animals, hunt. I've told him, we've had this conversation actually. I'm like, hey, dude, when stuff goes down, I'm showing up at your doorstep. You decide if I can stay. My other buddy, Alex is from Treehouse Brewing. He's one of the brewers there. Awesome dude. He's a veteran. He's a good guy to have by your side. I'm going to try and throw, I think a sales rep. I can't think of one specifically, and I don't want to alienate anyone, but you do need a sweet talker, I think, in the apocalypse for like resources and whatnot. You need someone that can kind of wheel and deal verbally. So I think I'd have to think of probably one of the best sales reps that I know, and he would barter for like food and toilet paper.
He said dude, by the way, so I'm taking a drink.
Oh, nice. Hey, I'll join you, dude.
Cheers. Well, that was awesome. I appreciate you talking business and talking some fun. And now I know I'm heading to Plymouth to survive with you guys. So
we got your back, man. We got your back.
Awesome. Jeremy, thanks so much.
Thank you so much, John. I appreciate you, man.
This Brewer Mag podcast is sponsored by Keg Logistics. Now's the perfect time to review your keg management strategy. Whether you're seeking a truly flexible keg rental program or intrigued by the seamless distribution freedom of paper fill, Keg Logistics is ready to craft a personalized solution for you, ensuring you receive the kegs you need precisely when you need them. For details, visit keglogistics.com/brewermag. Keg Logistics, modern solutions for keg efficiency.